Come on. Post-hockey game. Good morning. If Mark Carney wins the Liberal leadership race on March 9th, Canada could face an unprecedented situation. A Prime Minister who has never held elected office and under a loophole in Canada's ethics laws may not have to disclose his financial assets prior to an election. This raises significant concerns about his potential to influence policy for personal enrichment at the expense of average Canadians, particularly when it comes to a company called Stripe. Mark Carney served as a board member of Stripe, a $65 billion Irish-American payment processor, while also acting as a senior economic advisor to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Right now, Stripe is widely speculated to be preparing for an initial public offering, or going public, potentially this year. Recent actions which show this, that investors have speculated on its IPO evidence, include the company's cutting 1,000 jobs about a couple of years ago, but even more recently, the company just shed another 300 jobs. And this is something that some analysts are saying could be evidence of the company leaning operations ahead of an initial public offering. At his campaign launch on January 16th, Carney announced his resignations from the board of Stripe, Brookfield, Bloomberg, and others. But notably, he didn't confirm whether or not he had divested his financial interests in these companies. It's standards for board members to receive stock options or shares. And the question that I have is whether or not Mark Carney received any from Stripe and whether or not he still holds those interests. A very large, right now the valuation of a potential Stripe IPO is somewhere in the neighborhood of $65 to $70 billion. Could translate into substantial financial gain for somebody who holds certain financial instruments, as Mr. Carney potentially could. And also, Stripe, as a federally regulated financial services company in Canada, makes disclosure of his interests especially critical. So, Canadians deserve a straightforward answer. Does Mark Carney still hold any stake in Stripe? Now, just to explain the loophole that I've mentioned. Under Canada's Conflict of Interest Act, public office holders have 60 days to file disclosures and 120 days to finalize them after assuming office. If Carney wins the leadership and then quickly calls an election, it's conceivable that he wouldn't have to disclose his financial interests, such as the one in Stripe, until after an election. And again, this is a situation that the law didn't anticipate. An unelected person who had significant corporate board interests becoming Prime Minister and then not disclosing his interests ahead of a federal election. There's another issue with Stripe as well, too. Earlier this year, Visa and MasterCard reduced interchange fees, promising Canadian small businesses $1 billion in savings over 5 years. Stripe, however, retained some of these savings from small business clients. They held it back. In late 2024, former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland pledged policy action to ensure that payment processors, particularly Stripe, would be mandated to pass along savings to small businesses. Yet, Mark Carney has been curiously silent on this issue, and because Parliament is prorogued and committee hearings that were looking at this issue can't continue, these savings have not been passed along to small businesses. The other thing is that because these savings are not being passed along to small businesses and are being retained by Stripe, it could help inflate its value ahead of a potential IPO. So today, Conservatives are calling upon the following. For Mark Carney to disclose all of his corporate interests, not just in Stripe. I firmly think that Canadians, anybody seeking to lead this country, need to live above the letter of the law and with the spirit of the law, which he's not doing by not disclosing his assets. And we're also calling upon him to speak out and call upon Stripe to pass these interchange fee savings to small businesses, particularly as every Canadian business requires everything that we can possibly do to help them get ahead under the threat of American tariffs. Thank you.
Is your party going to defund the CBC?
Our party has been very clear on that issue. Conservative Leader Pierre Poilievre has made multiple statements that he would like to defund the CBC while maintaining a strong journalism environment in Canada.
Pourriez-vous clarifier qu'est-ce que ça veut dire?
En anglais, s'il vous plaît. Pardon.
What does it mean to defund the CBC?
Is it a part? Is it totally? What it means?
Again, our party leader has been very clear about this, that he will defund the CBC. Thank you.
The rally, though, I mean, he hasn't been as clear in the last week.
Multiple times, Pierre Poilievre has been very clear that he will defund the CBC.
Gardner, is that fair for President Trump to penalize Canada for having a digital services tax?
Conservative Leader Pierre Poilievre has been very clear with our party's plan to ensure that Canada is put first in light of the threat of American tariffs. That includes a plan to secure our borders as well as to bolster Canadian businesses.
Tax specifically, what do you think about that?
Again, Conservatives, we don't like a lot of the taxes that the Liberals have put in place. In fact, our primary platform has been axe the tax. So anything that Conservatives can do to make businesses more competitive in Canada, that's something that would be under our Canada First plan. Thank you.
One would argue that that tax, for example, is actually a disincentive to Canadian companies doing the same thing than American companies. And the American companies coming in Canada should pay at least a certain level of taxes that Canadian companies are paying. So do you
Again, Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre has been very clear that we'll put Canada first in any situation or scenario involving American tax. Thank you. Yes.
Ms. Rempel-Garner, I want to ask you about something Stephen Harper wrote in a newspaper this week, saying that Canada's focus should not be on pursuing deeper economic and security partnerships with the United States, and that we must avoid further dependency on the United States. I'm wondering what you think of that. Do you agree with that?
I read former Prime Minister Stephen Harper's op-ed in the Globe yesterday, and I found that he actually echoed a lot of the sentiments that Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre has already put out with regard to. Again, though, our party leader has been very clear that we would put forward, and we have put forward, again, very strong set of policies to secure our borders, to make Canadian businesses more competitive, and to make Canada more economically competitive as a whole. So, but I will say this, who isn't commenting on these things, who hasn't talked to you guys at all, is the press gallery? Mark Carney. It'd be great if he did that this week, too.
This message your party is sending that Canada is broken, do you think it's resonating with Canadians, given the fact we're seeing this rising nationalist feeling?
I've had the opportunity to door knock in some of the frigid weather that we've had across this country over the last several weeks. And as our party leader, Pierre Poilievre, has said in interviews on this topic this week, it is perfectly permissible, not just permissible, but necessary to address the systemic issues that the Liberals have caused in Canada that are causing people a lot of pain and a lot of harm. People can't afford groceries. That's one of the number one things that I get in my inbox in my constituencies, that they can't afford to eat or pay their rent. There's many systems in our country that just aren't delivering what they're supposed to do. Our federal deficit is out of control. These are all problems that need to be addressed. They shouldn't be glossed over. And I understand why Liberals like Mark Carney are trying to gloss over that fact, because they want Canadians to forget the pain and destruction that this government has caused them. So we're doing something far different than the Liberals are doing. First of all, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is going out and acknowledging the pain and destruction that the Liberals have caused, like the suffering on our streets due to the fentanyl crisis, like the housing affordability crisis. But the other thing that he's doing is he's coming out with tangible policy, like our Canada First plan. Meanwhile, you've got Mark Carney coming out spewing some sort of gobbledygook about spending more and investing spending. So, I think that acknowledging the fact that the Liberals have caused Canadians suffering and coming up with a firm plan to achieve that is something that we will continue to do, and I'm proud of our party leader for doing that. Thank you. Thank you.
Is Canada still broken?